Chapter 1. The Invitation. It was New Year's Eve, and the small, snow-covered town of Pine Hollow buzzed with excitement. Twinkling fairy lights adorned every home, and the streets brimmed with cheerful neighbors wishing each other well. Amid the festive atmosphere, Claire Bennett, a reclusive writer, sat alone in her dimly lit home. Her phone buzzed, breaking the eerie silence. It was a message from her childhood friend, Eva. "Claire, it's been ages. Come to the old Lancaster Manor tonight. A few of us are having a small New Year's celebration. Midnight will be magical." Claire's heart skipped a beat. Lancaster Manor had been abandoned for decades, its dark history the stuff of local legend. Once a grand estate, it fell into ruin after the mysterious disappearance of its owner, James Lancaster, on New Year's Eve 30 years ago. Her instinct screamed to decline, but curiosity tugged at her. Claire hadn't seen Ava in years, and her writer's mind couldn't resist the allure of a setting so steeped in lore. Against her better judgment, she replied, "I'll be there." Chapter 2. The Journey. The drive to Lancaster Manor was unsettling. Pine Hollow's streets, so vibrant earlier, now seemed deserted. A dense fog descended, swallowing the moonlight. Claire's car crept along the winding road, her headlights struggling to pierce the mist. As she approached the manor, her unease grew. The imposing structure loomed like a dark sentinel, its jagged silhouette framed by leafless, gnarled trees. The iron gates creaked open as if on cue, revealing a driveway choked with dead leaves. Claire parked and stepped out, the chill biting her skin. In the distance, faint laughter echoed. It came from the manor, its windows glowing with a flickering amber light. "Just a party," she whispered to herself, pushing the heavy oak door open. Chapter 3. The Gathering. The interior was as unsettling as the exterior. Candles cast long, wavering shadows across the grand foyer. A chandelier hung precariously overhead, its crystals dusty and dull. The laughter grew louder, leading Claire to a parlor where a small group of people mingled. Ava rushed to her, her face glowing with excitement. "Claire, you made it!" Claire forced a smile. "How could I miss a chance to see you?" Ava introduced her to the others. Mark, a history professor, Lily, a local artist, and Greg, an amateur paranormal investigator. Claire felt out of place, but their warmth eased her nerves. As the night wore on, they shared drinks, stories, and laughter. Yet Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Chapter 4. The Legend Resurfaces. It was Greg who suggested it. "We're in Lancaster Manor. We can't not talk about the legend." Mark rolled his eyes but nodded. "Fine. Let's get it over with." Greg's voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. James Lancaster, the last owner of this manor, was obsessed with the occult. They say he performed rituals to summon the Shadow, an entity that could grant unimaginable power. But on New Year's Eve 30 years ago, something went wrong. Lancaster vanished, leaving behind only a pool of blood and a diary filled with cryptic warnings. Claire shivered. What kind of warnings? Greg's grin widened. That the Shadow feeds on fear and that it thrives in the hour between years, midnight on New Year's Eve. Eva laughed nervously. "It's just a story. Don't scare us before the countdown." But Claire noticed something strange. The flickering light from the candles seemed to dim as Greg spoke, the shadows stretching and writhing like living things. Chapter 5. The First Omen. As midnight approached, Lily suggested exploring the manor. "It's the perfect way to ring in the new year." Reluctantly, the group agreed. Armed with flashlights, they ventured into the upper floors. The air grew colder, the silence oppressive. In one of the bedrooms, Claire found an old mirror covered with a dusty cloth. When she pulled it away, her breath caught. The reflection didn't match reality. While the room behind her was dark and empty, the mirror showed a crowd of shadowy figures standing silently, their faces indistinct. "Guys, come here," she called. But when they arrived, the mirror appeared normal. "You've had too much to drink," Mark teased. Claire forced a laugh, but her unease deepened. Chapter 6. Midnight approaches. The group returned to the parlor, the festive mood now strained. They tried to laugh it off, but the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing minute. At 11:45 p.m., the house began to creak and groan as though it were alive. A draft extinguished several candles, plunging parts of the room into darkness. "Old houses make noises," Mark reasoned, though his voice trembled. At 11:55 p.m., Greg's phone buzzed. "No signal," he muttered, frowning. The others checked theirs, all dead. At 11:58 p.m., the shadows in the room deepened, pooling unnaturally in corners. Claire's heart pounded as she noticed the shapes resembled human forms. Chapter 7. The Midnight Toll. The clock struck midnight. The final chime echoed like a thunderclap, and the lights extinguished entirely. "Happy New Year," Eva whispered, her voice barely audible. A chilling wind swept through the room, and the group huddled together. Suddenly, a deep, guttural voice rumbled, seemingly from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Who dares disturb my domain?" A figure emerged from the darkness, a tall, shifting silhouette with glowing red eyes, the Shadow. Mark screamed and bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. "You invited me," the entity hissed. "Through your fear, I grow strong." Chapter 8. The Hunt begins. Panic erupted. The group scattered, each running blindly into the depths of the manor. Claire found herself alone in a narrow hallway, her flashlight flickering. "Stay calm," she whispered, but her words offered no comfort. A chilling laugh echoed, and she turned to see the Shadow gliding toward her, its form distorting unnaturally. She ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, screams rang out. First Mark, then Lily. The Shadow was hunting them one by one. Chapter 9. The Revelation. Claire stumbled into a library, slamming the door shut behind her. Her flashlight illuminated a desk covered in papers, James Lancaster's diary. Desperation drove her to read, "The Shadow cannot be destroyed, only banished. It feeds on fear. Stand united, and its power wanes. Divide, and it will consume you all." She understood. The Shadow thrived on their terror and isolation. Chapter 10. The Final Stand. Gathering her courage, Claire sought out the others. She found Eva hiding in a wardrobe, sobbing. Together they located Greg, who was clutching a makeshift weapon. "We have to face it," Claire insisted. Together. Reluctantly they agreed. The trio returned to the parlor, where the Shadow awaited, its form now monstrous. "Your fear is delicious," it snarled. But instead of running, they stood firm, holding hands. "You won't have us," Claire said, her voice steady. The Shadow hesitated, its form flickering. Their unity weakened it, and the oppressive darkness began to lift. With a final, unearthly scream, the entity dissolved into nothingness. Chapter 11. The Dawn. As the first light of dawn seeped through the windows, the house seemed to exhale. The heavy atmosphere lifted, and the group stumbled outside, shaken but alive. Eva hugged Claire tightly. "You saved us." Claire nodded, but her gaze lingered on the manor. The Shadow was gone, for now. But she knew its hunger was eternal, and its legend would live on. For the rest of her life, Claire never celebrated New Year's Eve again. And don't forget to subscribe.